Hello, boys, and like 2 other people. One of the most common kinds of questions I get in my comments has to do with how different jets and jet loadouts work. So let's talk about it. For organizational purposes, I believe things will be much simpler for us if we discuss each ordnance type and how to use them rather than trying to go through each aircraft in the game one by one. Couple things to note before we get started. 1. I am primarily a US player. While I intend to keep this guide general enough to work for both factions, I may end up reaching a bit for some of the Russian specifics. Most people should know this, but in case you don't, when you're in the hangar setting up your units, click this button here. This view gives you a lot more information about your units, and it is the view I will be using pretty exclusively in this video. Let's start with the simplest ordnance type for jets: air-to-air missiles. Long-range missiles include the Russian R-37 and the US Gunslingers and JATMs. They do what you think they do and have minor differences, not really worth discussion. Medium-range missiles include the Russian R-77 and the United States AMRAAM. They also do what you think they do and have minor differences, not really worth discussion. Short-range missiles include the Russian R-73s and R-60 and the US Sidewinder. These missiles do what you think they do. Plus, they also can target helicopters, which no other jet-carried missiles can do. The R-73 and the Sidewinder are almost the same in function, while the R-60 is just a cheaper version that does less damage. Semi-active missiles include the Russian R-27ER and the US Sparrow. They are radar missiles that fall between medium and short range. They can only fire at jets, and the aircraft that fired the semi-active missile must keep its forward-facing radar cone on the target, all the way up till the missile hits the target, or the missile will lose lock. The R-27ET for Russia is essentially a short-range missile that trades away the ability to target helicopters but gains 1,000 meters of range. Now let's talk about guidance types for these missiles. Terminal guidance simply means that the missile is guided to its target part of the way by the radar on the platform that fired it. Then once it closes to a certain unspecified range, the missile itself takes over and goes pitbull, guiding itself into its target. This means, for example, if this missile is tracking target A, and you select the plane and right-click on target B, your missile will switch targets mid-air to target B, unless it's gotten too close and has already gone pitbull. Fire and forget guidance just means the missile is already going pitbull off the rail. It cannot be retargeted once it is launched. Semi-active missiles we have already discussed. I know that in real life, the Sparrow missile can be retasked to a new lock if it somehow loses its first lock. I do not know if the Russian equivalent can do the same, and I don't know if either of these missiles can do the same in the game. Seeing as how I rarely use these missiles, I just do not care enough to test it. Now that we know our options, let's discuss some broad tactics you can use with them. Personally, I see 3 ways to run your air superiority fighters. First, you can run a full long-range loadout. Run as many long-range missiles as you can fit on your jet and circle it in the backline. The pros to this strategy is that you are more survivable and more likely to get your jet back. Cons, you are not as effective at killing enemy jets and are very ineffective at killing helicopters. Your second option is to run a more balanced loadout, something like half medium-range missiles and half short-range missiles depending on your specific jet. The pros are you can readily engage all targets, and providing you live, you can down more enemies. On the con side of things, you are less likely to survive. Option number 3 is to run a ripple fire type loadout. For example, the FA-18C variant of the Hornet can run a loadout that contains all missile groups. That is, 2 long-range gunslingers, 4 or 2 AMRAAMs, 2 Sidewinders, and 2 Sparrows. If you take this loadout and target it on an enemy jet by right-clicking, then the Hornet will charge it, firing off each missile type as it gets within its range. This will stack 4 missiles onto one enemy very quickly, and you are very likely to get a kill. The pro, massive damage potential on one target, and there is some versatility in there. Cons, it's all or nothing, baby. This loadout is all about commitment. Obviously, these are not hard rules. You should experiment with variations according to your preferred playstyle. Next, let's talk about air-to-ground ordnance. The question of how to use specific CAS ordnance is one of the most common questions I see people asking. So we're going to take some time to cover all the ground ordnance types and how said types are deployed in the game. What we'll be looking at for the purpose of identifying how a particular ordnance is used is weapon type, target icons, and shell trajectory. Starting with our first type, we'll discuss free-fall bombs. They are what they sound like, with both Russian and US variants behaving in similar manners. These bombs will be called free-fall bombs under type, with a trajectory of simply bomb. These bombs are dropped exclusively with the bombing run command. Hotkey is O.
Airstrike complete.
Smart bombs can be dropped with the same bombing run command as before. However, smart bombs can also, and generally should be, deployed using the precision strike command. How this functions in the game is, you select the aircraft once it is on the map and press the precision strike button, or hotkey P, multiple times in a row. For example, if you're carrying 3 JDAMs, you'll press the precision strike key 3 times in succession. Then you'll click on the map where you want each bomb to go individually. Once the last bomb target is clicked, your jet will begin its aim phase, which varies depending on the ordnance. After taking the time to aim, your aircraft will make its own way to each target point and drop its bombs. If you give the plane any other command before the last bomb is dropped, the attack run will be interrupted. So be sure all bombs are away before sending the plane home. There are many variations of smart bomb, but they will either be a high explosive or a cluster type bomb. Just remember that clusters are only good versus vehicles, while high explosive type bombs are more general purpose, and if enemy armor is lased, an HE smart bomb will still do massive damage. Next we have high drag bombs. Like freefall bombs, they can only be dropped using the bombing run command. Unlike the previous 2 bomb types, however, they can be dropped from low altitude. While they tend to be smaller in size, they usually get a larger number of bombs as a trade-off. This makes them useful for suppressing any swarms of enemy units, should your opponent make the mistake of grouping his assets where you can see them. It is worth noting that aircraft with these bombs never have to come off the deck, which greatly increases their survivability. Next we have cruise missiles. They are targeted in the exact same manner that smart bombs are, using the same hotkeys and everything. These missiles will simply fire off once in range. The downside being, the enemy will have more opportunities to dodge and or shoot down your missiles. Anti-radiation missiles, or anti-rad missiles, are very straightforward, and while there are several variants, they all function the same way. Simply have them on a plane, fly the plane into the battle space, and if an enemy ground radar strikes the plane, your anti-rad missile will automatically detect and fire upon that radar with no prompting from you. A personal favorite, air-to-ground missiles. These are the Mavericks on the US side and the KH-38s on the Russian side. I am aware that in Russian, KH is actually pronounced KH, as in KH-38 missiles. However, I am an American, a decadent Western, a filthy capitalist big dog. As such, I prefer to speak in a clear and concise manner that does not involve regurgitating my own phlegm just to pronounce a word correctly. Thus, I'll be saying KH for the duration of this video. These missiles will automatically fire upon lased targets in a similar manner to how anti-rad missiles work. Otherwise, these missiles will only fire during a strafe run command. While on a strafe run, your pilot will automatically fire these missiles at any targets in front of the plane. I have observed that your pilot seems to prioritize scare units before weaker ones. Next are direct fire weapons. This includes any cannons on the aircraft, as well as unguided rockets of various kinds. All of these weapons can be fired simply by right-clicking on a ground target, and your jet will make an attack on that target. It is notable that if there are other targets close to your initial click, your jet will often target them as well, although the cone of attack is fairly narrow. Alternatively, you can perform a strafe run command. This will generally exhaust all of your ammunition, excluding your cannon. And finally, we have semi-active ATGMs. These are pretty exclusive to Russia and include the Vickers found on the Su-25 as well as the KH-25ML on various platforms. Both of these missiles launch off of a strafe run or a laser, just as the previous air-to-ground missiles discussed. However, both require the aircraft to remain alive and targeting for the missile to hit. Both of these systems have other drawbacks compared to the KH-38s or the Mavericks. The Vickers specifically are less powerful individually and can be intercepted by APS systems, while the KH-25s can only be fired one at a time, greatly limiting the amount of damage one strafe run can accomplish. That wraps up all the weapon types. Next, I'm going to throw a few unorganized tips and suggestions at you on the pretense that I totally know what I'm talking about. A quick point for anyone studying the Russian loadouts. Do not get confused by conflicting names. Look here rather than here if you want to understand how to use this missile. The KH-29TD does not function as an air-to-ground missile. It functions as a cruise missile. In real life, the KH-29 family of missiles are all guided munitions, and the KH-29TD specifically is a TV/infrared guided missile that should function identical to Mavericks or KH-38s. However, in Broken Arrow, they are cruise missiles.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
I would highly recommend that you do not mix a loadout of ordnance that deploys differently. For example, don't mix bombs with ground attack missiles. You should run loadouts that can all be utilized in one attack run, as it is very rare for your aircraft to survive long enough to make a second run. There are ordnance combinations that work, of course. Just think your combination through before you commit to it. Always bring your jets in at low altitude. If you have high drag bombs, then never come off the deck. If not, try to wait as long as possible before committing your jet to its attack run. This will keep the jet low as long as possible before its autopilot brings the aircraft up to its attack altitude. As soon as the attack is complete, drop back down to low altitude and afterburn your way out. It is still typical to lose your aircraft fairly often, but your chances of both making the run and getting away go up if you follow this method. When you have selected any unit in the game, you will see that unit's weapon options displayed on the bottom of your screen. You can click any of these weapons to toggle them on or off, thus preventing or allowing that unit to use that weapon. I'll leave you to consider all the ways this can be useful, though I will add one suggestion for seed runs. If you are bringing a fast jet, like the F-16CJ, with anti-rad missiles, it can be useful to disable those anti-rads at first, and rush up on an AA position at low altitude, then turn the missiles back on once you are close. In this way, you can minimize the anti-aircraft battery's opportunities to defend itself. That's it for my thoughts on jet combat in Broken Arrow. Now get out there, hunt yourself some dopamine.